And we're back in the car on a Saturday like we never left. Welcome to the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your early Saturday afternoon here with me in New York. But once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. 29 years to the day was the release of what's generally regarded to be the last great, put the word great in quotes, blockbuster that Arnold Schwarzenegger ever made. Now, Arnold Schwarzenegger, obviously, his career, his life is unlike that of anyone else. I've talked about him on the channel. He's somebody whose name always comes up with his connections, of course, to Sylvester Stallone and Clint Eastwood, and the fact that for many years he was world's box office #1, and he had a stretch of 9 years from 1987 into 1996, where not only was he easily the biggest star in the world in that time frame, but the quality of the movies that he came out with and the people he worked with, it's, without anybody saying it, it's the answer to the question, why would someone such as Sylvester Stallone ever be jealous of Arnold? Stallone, Rocky ended up winning Best Picture. Sly won Screenplay. Sylvester Stallone, by any metric, has had a stupendous career. He's a terrific filmmaker on top of everything else. But I believe the reason why Sly was jealous was because Arnold, in that stretch, got to work with James Cameron twice, John McTiernan twice, Paul Verhoeven once, and Ivan Reitman twice. And Stallone kind of worked with James Cameron once. He worked with James Cameron in, Cameron got co-screenplay credit for Rambo First Blood Part 2. But Arnold just had the knack for latching onto and for impressing people who he respected, such as Ivan Reitman. And Ivan Reitman, who unfortunately has passed, he told the story of meeting Arnold, I don't know if it was a Oscars party, but it was well before they made Twins. It was probably in the 1986 era. And Ivan Reitman said that Arnold was so engaged and he was just so damn charming that he started thinking, well, maybe there is something. Maybe I can work with him. And it turned out that Arnold was funnier than anybody knew, except for the people who were in the bodybuilding industry, who were saying from the early 70s, this guy's a fucking riot. He's a more cutthroat competitor than you would expect. But if you just ask, is this guy funny? He's funny as hell. He was telling jokes in English, which was obviously not his first language, but he was making puns and double entendres in English a couple of months after moving here. You know, Arnold is smart, but he's not like a normal smart person. He's on another level. He always has been. And from 1987, and the reason why I don't go earlier, because the Terminator is better than some of the movies I'm going to name, is way better, the original Terminator. But after the original Terminator, Arnold did Red Sonja, which really isn't that great, and Commando. I know that Commando is a movie I'm supposed to love. It's not very good. Red Sonja, not that good. Raw Deal, not that good. Although the character name, Mark Kaminsky, and I've used this phrase before, and Roger Ebert, my favorite film critic of all time, the Pulitzer Prize winner, has talked about it. There are certain performers that you look at them and this can't be the name. Jack Palance playing a character called Yves Perret, speaking of Stallone, in Tango and Cash with Kurt Russell. And Roger Ebert said, nobody in human history has ever looked less like an Yves Perret than Jack Palance. Well, I would venture to guess, and I would dare to say, that nobody's ever looked less like Mark Kaminsky than Arnold Schwarzenegger. But there we are in the movie Raw Deal, he's Mark Kaminsky. But starting in 1987 and going right up through Eraser, Arnold did Predator, which was not only a critical success, a couple of Oscar nominations in technical categories, was a financial success, and is a fantastic horror film if you could just look at it as a horror movie and not the blood-soaked, testosterone-fueled actioner. but Predator was a big success all around. The Running Man was a hit. That was later in 97, like the Thanksgiving and Christmas season. The Running Man was a hit. It was not as big a hit as I think it should have been. It is a fantastic satire. Even though Stephen King, who wrote the original novel under the pseudonym of Richard Bachman, and they're doing the Edgar Wright and Glenn Powell, Arnold's talked about it. He's excited to see what they come up with. I think The Running Man is a fantastic satire on top of being a great action movie, and it offers a terrific role for a guy who I thought was just a game show host in Richard Dawson. I didn't know that he was an actor first. He was on Hogan's Heroes, and then he's, top 3 greatest game show hosts in the history of the medium. Family Feud, Richard Dawson was a fucking riot. Survey said. And I like Steve Harvey, but no offense, Steve Harvey is not Richard Dawson. So The Running Man, I think, is way underrated by history. And then Arnold did really the only movie in that entire stretch that I think is just okay, or that doesn't have anything really to recommend it. Red Heat with Jim Belushi, an actor I like a lot, I should say. You see what they were going for with the kind of mismatched cop partners, buddy cops. Arnold plays a Russian cop named Danko, and then people keep thinking he's saying thank you, and they say you're welcome. They get a few laughs. He has good chemistry with Jim Belushi, though. They work well together. Edo Ross, who was a kind of big genre supporting actor of the day, he plays a dastardly villain, and he's really good. The movie's just okay. I saw it in theaters. That's actually the answer to a personal trivia question. First Arnold Schwarzenegger film I ever saw in theaters, Red Heat. Saw it with Dad. I would have been 14 at the time. So Red Heat barely turned a profit, but it's not really that great. But it kept Arnold's kind of mojo going. And then he did Twins with the aforementioned master of certainly film comedies in Ivan Reitman. And Twins was a key film for Arnold because it showed that he had impeccable comic timing, that he was able to not only hold his own with a brilliant sketch comedian such as a Danny DeVito. Even though DeVito didn't really start in sketch comedy, but I think of him, he is a comic actor first. He's played some dramatic roles. And DeVito has the ability to be incredibly funny in short bursts, as we've seen in movies, even such as later works like Other People's Money. But Arnold steals the film. He takes the film away from the brilliant Danny DeVito and makes it his own. And that was a monster box office hit. They've been talking about doing a sequel. They're still talking about doing a sequel. There was some chatter in the mid-90s that Eddie Murphy was going to play the long-lost third sibling, and that didn't work out. Eddie had some issues. He did Nutty Professor, which was an enormous hit in its own right. And after Twins is when Arnold's career just went into the stratosphere. Because in 1990, he came out with Total Recall by Paul Verhoeven, the Dutchman, and just a sensational filmmaker. He had done RoboCop in 87. And then he had Kindergarten Cop at the end of the year. Now, Kindergarten Cop, there were many people who thought it was going to be the biggest hit of the Christmas season of 1990. It ended up being a substantial hit, but it had the misfortune of being released in the shadow of Home Alone, which just blew everyone's expectations out of the water. And to this day, many people consider it to be, top 5 best holiday Christmas type movies ever made. But there was always an idea that Arnold was going to do another Terminator, and Terminator 2 he was working on as Kindergarten Cop hit theaters. And Terminator 2 ended up being the biggest hit, dollar for dollar, of Arnold's career, and one of the biggest hits in the history of cinema up to that point in time. And Arnold was able to kind of connect with Generation X in a way that he maybe hadn't before. And I mentioned this in the Last Action Hero episode. But Last Action Hero was what he did next after Terminator 2, and in a weird way similar to The Running Man, audiences weren't quite in tune with it. They weren't quite ready for that sort of movie. And Last Action Hero is a film which is extremely well remembered by history. It was considered to be that people just missed the boat, that it was a way better movie than it was given credit for once upon a time, and now is acknowledged. No, this is another Arnold classic, to throw a little IFBB bodybuilding reference in there. Then he did True Lies, and True Lies working again for the third time with James Cameron. And that's one of the best action films ever made. It's got to be in the conversation, top 10. Some people maybe even put it higher. It's so stupid. It's a remake of a French film from 1991 called La Totale, but you have Bill Paxton. Man, who doesn't miss Bill Paxton? Gone so young. But Bill Paxton was so great in so many different movies, right up to his last big film, Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise, where he's absolutely hilarious. He's serious, but because his character keeps repeating, it's like a Groundhog Day action movie, his character starts to become a figure of fun the further into the story you get. But True Lies was another massive box office hit for both Arnold and James Cameron. And then he had a health issue. He had a heart valve issue in 95, and some people were really concerned. He was pushing 50, and yes, as a 7-time IFBB Mr. Olympia bodybuilder, he was taking certain substances which we can all, I shouldn't say that, most of us can agree were probably injurious to his long-term health. Now, Arnold supposedly, because we don't know this, he supposedly didn't use as much of the guys of, let's say, going forward from the 80s into today, but we don't know that. And there are some people who have the ability to take toxic substances and not necessarily destroy the systems in their body, and other people don't take very much and do. So when he had that heart valve repair, and famously he said, "I'll be back," you know, his catchphrase, and it was very upbeat, but there was a sense that, you know, he's staring at his own mortality. I don't care who you are. You have heart valve damage and they have to do what amounts to an emergency surgery. It's serious stuff. So he shot Eraser once he fully recovered from this issue. And I remember that, I think it was the front page of the Daily News, and it just said, "He'll be back. You know, Arnold undergoes successful valve surgery," or something along those lines. It was not like they weren't throwing shots at him or trashing him in the press. It wasn't that sort of thing. But Eraser got a big buildup. And it was produced, I mean, so Warner Brothers, it was produced by, at the time, a big-time guy, Arnold Kopelson. I think he was part of the team that brought us The Fugitive with Harrison Ford, of course, another big action guy who's still doing action films. This guy is older than Arnold. He's 82, and he's still making action movies. I mean, what an end-boss guy Harrison Ford is. But Eraser had the right pedigree, the right backing with Kopelson, with Warner Brothers, and a filmmaker who I think is a talented filmmaker, Chuck Russell. His previous film had been The Mask with Jim Carrey. And yes, it's silly, but it helped to solidify that Jim Carrey was not a flash in the pan, that he was actually, no, this is Hollywood's newest superstar right here. Chuck Russell's direction, the way he shot certain scenes, other filmmakers may not have done it the same way, that he was able to shoot around certain special effects shots, and it's almost seamless 31 years later. It's a really good film. So I started, when I say we started seeing teasers to Eraser early in 1996. I don't think the teaser was released in time for the Christmas season of 95. Of that, I could be wrong. But it's one of my favorite teasers ever, because it gives almost nothing away about the movie, but it shows the big guy, he's back, you know, whatever, that Arnold's back in kind of early action hero mode, and let's kick some ass, let's fucking go. And there's a moment in the teaser trailer where you see all of this kind of stuff happening, where they're describing his character. His name is John Kruger. He's a U.S. Marshal, but he's a U.S. Marshal. This is not, you know, Tommy Lee Jones tracking down Harrison Ford in the aforementioned The Fugitive. He's working another end of the Marshal Service, the Witness Protection Program. And the kind of action sequence of the trailer, I don't think Arnold he didn't shoot it himself, but it's an action sequence of a place getting blown up, presumably a dwelling getting blown up, and the tagline, "To protect your future, he will erase your past." And then we move into the kind of quick cut showing off all the major action sequences of the film in the trailer. And it's a shot of Arnold looking like Arnold of the Terminator, Arnold of True Lies, Arnold of Last Action Hero. And he is basically rolling up a gun, and he moves forward as if he's saying to the audience, "I'm back in action." And there was just something about that trailer. I was hoping the movie was going to be good and not get trashed by critics. But then again, Last Action Hero, a lot of critics thought the film was a disaster, and it really wasn't. But I was not 100% sold on Last Action Hero yet. Love True Lies, and I saw Terminator 2 3 times in theaters for reference. And I think Total Recall is the top 3 best movie that Arnold ever made in his entire career. So I was geeked for Eraser. I was primed, and I saw it on opening day at, well, it's what's now called a Shore 8 in Huntington, but at the time it was like a Shore 3. the movie theater was kind of falling apart at that juncture, and they didn't really do the redesign until '97. But that's where I saw it. I saw it in Huntington, and that's where I lived. My dad's house was in Huntington. I hadn't graduated New York University yet. In the summer of '96, I had seen The Rock that summer with Sean Connery and Nicolas Cage. And Eraser got good reviews. The local papers all gave it either 3 stars. I think it was Newsday gave it 3, the Post gave it 3, and I think the Daily News gave it 2.5. But it was like a fun 2.5 stars, sort of like Van Damme the previous fall, where a number of critics gave the film 2.5 stars, but every one of those said, go see it. This movie's so effing stupid, but it's so much fun, you'll love it. And that was the gist that I got from Eraser. The thing with Eraser is that it's in a minor key. There are a lot of big budget action sequences in the film, but the story is not really there's not that much to the story. She was Vanessa Williams, and then she added the L to her name because there was another actress who I think had the name with the Screen Actors Guild first, also Vanessa Williams. So Vanessa L. Williams, she had been the Miss America, the singer, just a stupendous talent. She plays a woman in the world of this film who stumbles onto some, let's just say, some state secrets held by this weapons manufacturer she works for. And if she testifies, she's going to get bumped off. I mean, the story is pretty on the nose, pretty obvious, but that's literally what it is. And here comes Arnold's Marshal John Kruger to protect her. But Arnold's boss, his mentor, his buddy, played by James Caan, it's not really much of a spoiler. James Caan's character is horrendous. He makes Sonny Corleone seem like Abraham Lincoln. I mean, this guy, you wouldn't trust him as far as you could bowl him, as far as you could put 50 bullets in him. It's a really fun, dastardly villain performance by James Caan. He didn't really get to do that very much in his career. And James Caan, may he rest in peace, he was so great when he did the talk show circuit to promote whatever the movies were, whether it was Elf in 2003, where, I thought he was miscast, but his character kind of gets better as the film goes along. But that was a really weird casting of James Caan as Buddy the Elf's father. That was just bizarre casting. But when James Caan went on the talk shows, when he went on with Letterman and Leno, and I think he did Rick Dees, he had a talk show, the late night talk show at the time. But James Caan said a lot of really funny stuff, which had me cracking up. And I think he was on with Letterman, and Letterman asked him, he said, Jimmy, you look like you were in terrific condition, worked out for the film. Was being in a movie with Arnold, with the 20-inch arms or whatever it is, did that kind of motivate you to stay in shape or to work out harder? He was just asking him some stupid stuff like that. And James Caan kind of took what Letterman said and ran with it. And I'll never forget this. James Caan goes, well, actually, Dave, remember how he talked? He was so intense. He said, actually, I showed up to set first day. I was in such incredible shape that Arnold actually ordered me. He said I had to train down. The way that James Caan said, Arnold told me I had to train down. He said it with such sincerity, like an actor in a movie. I believed it. That Arnold was intimidated by the kind of condition that James Caan was in. He said, you shouldn't look this good, Jimmy. You shouldn't look this good. It was bullshit, but it made for a funny story. So James Caan plays this dastardly villain who double crosses Marshal John Kruger. And then you have all of these other guys, and this is something that happens in movies, and it always was a red flag for me that the writers were kind of taking an easy way out. When you have people who have sort of sworn an oath to do a certain thing, and then it's just a question of a couple of bucks, and you're willing to go back on everything else. I don't know. At least in the movie The Rock, the same concept comes up with Ed Harris's, general. I mean, he's way more hardcore than any of the people in this film. But you get the idea of the price that he's paying, and the people who have kind of become turncoats. They talk about it, and they basically say, we wouldn't have done this if we knew you were full of shit. In a world of this movie, they don't even go as deep as that. And not that The Rock is has deep philosophical musings, but there's at least, from a conceptual standpoint, they address what I'm saying, which is the world of this film. You have a bunch of people who have been upstanding citizens doing a very serious government job for decades, who all of a sudden, couple of shekels, and you know what, we're willing to kill one of our own, and we're willing to just randomly murder a woman who is trying to expose bad things, it doesn't really fit. But it is a summer action movie. It is that kind of blockbuster where we're not supposed to do what I'm telling you. We're not supposed to see this as some deep treatise into the inner workings of government agencies such as the Marshal Service. We're just supposed to, this is a disposable action film. This is Arnold looking really good for a guy who is pushing 50. I mean, he looks phenomenal, and many critics mention he looks fantastic. Okay, he's not as big as he was in Terminator 2, but he looked healthy. And a lot of critics pointed out he had the health issues, but he's back in fighting trim. He looks fantastic, and he seems to be having fun. And James Caan seems to be having fun. And Robert Pastorelli, that was kind of an unusual bit of casting. Boy, is he terrific. He plays another guy that Arnold has ushered through or shepherded through the witness protection program, and he ends up playing a more important role in the film than we think. And his character is similar, not in the same way, but in a similar, from a conceptual standpoint, he's similar to the character played by the late, and I loved him as an actor, Tom Sizemore, what his character does with Will Smith in Enemy of the State. And it's a very similar setup to what they had done with Robert Pastorelli in Eraser. But just an aside, the Tom Sizemore character and that entire situation that transpires in Enemy of the State is the reason why Gene Hackman says a top 5 best line in Gene Hackman's career when he says to Will Smith's Robert Clayton Dean, "You're either incredibly smart or incredibly stupid." But in a world of Eraser, we see what Robert Pastorelli's character Ango is. And when we realize he's coming back into the story, because he disappears for like at least an hour of the film, we completely forget that this guy is even involved. And when Arnold calls in a favor, it is gold. It is money. And I think his character and what he ends up doing is why this film got as good of reviews as it did. Now, Eraser is a box office hit. It went well over 100 million in a summer that was pretty packed with big movies and even kind of somewhat smaller films which did well at the box office, such as, because John Travolta had a big summer, just as, Nick Cage, his buddy in Face Off, had a huge summer in 97 where he had Con Air and Face Off. In 96, John Travolta had Broken Arrow, which was kind of early summer. I think that came out maybe April, May, but it feels like a summer movie. But then he did Phenomenon, which was a bigger hit than a lot of people expected. It's okay. I saw that in theaters. But the idea was it's a crowded marketplace in the summer of 96 with The Nutty Professor, with Independence Day ready to clean it up in July, with Charlie Sheen's The Arrival, a kind of surprise, like that's a really good alien invasion sci-fi film. Charlie Sheen has not really had that great of a time in the last couple of decades, but when he was focused, he's a terrific actor. I don't care what anybody says, and he gives a great performance in the film The Arrival. So Eraser, I know, has been on Max. It's been on Tubi. I'm pretty sure you can find it free on streaming, but it's a film that I liked, and from the historical perspective, the understanding that this is the last true Arnold classic. He came back in 99 with End of Days, which is okay. It's kind of a horror thriller action movie hybrid. The story's just not that good. Supposedly the original screenplay was fantastic, and they worked on it. And I really like the filmmaker Peter Hyams. Speaking of Tom Sizemore, he did The Relic with Tom Sizemore and Penelope Ann Miller. That's a real undersold 90s classic horror film. I'm definitely going to have to talk about that one. But Eraser is a product of its time, when you could just blow shit up real good and have a generational star like Arnold Schwarzenegger spouting one-liners, "Your luggage." He actually says to a crocodile at one point, "Man, what a great line, your luggage." And that was a cool special effects shot. But it was a time when just having one lone star, not James Bond, taking on scores of people, and he's going to come out victorious because he's Arnold in that era. There's not going to be any equivocation. There's not going to be any soul searching. I mean, Arnold's character is so cool. At one point in the movie, he's on a 747 strapped in. He's literally strapped in place, handcuffed. and there are 10 people with the same training as him on the plane. And he says to James Caan's villainous character, I forgot the guy's name, he goes, "If you let me go free, I promise I won't kill you." And James Caan, another incredible line reading, he goes, "Johnny, I'm just going to have to take my chances." Spoiler alert, bad mistake, or as Arnold says in Last Action Hero, big mistake, big mistake. I promise I'll let you live. Oops. But Eraser, the last Arnold classic, released on this day, 1996, directed by the terrific Chuck Russell and starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, James Caan, Vanessa L. Williams, and a fire Robert Pastorelli. This has been episode 570 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all so much for spending some of your Saturday early afternoon here with me in New York. If you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, or the others in which we're hosted, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Until then, peace.